Hello everyone, this is Amnesia. I'm going to be showing you how to basically move up from the just brand new starting StarCraft and hopefully improve till you can get to the mid-level of StarCraft with this series. The series is going to be called Bronze to the Basics, and for the first episode here we're just going to get everything set up, the core things that you should have going in to be prepared to easily transition into the later stages of playing. One of the issues that a lot of people run into is that when they're starting and they don't have anybody to let them know good practices and poor practices, they'll learn certain things that work at, say, the bronze level, and they'll focus on those, and they'll find things that work at that level. But then they'll realize as they progress that those things don't necessarily work, so they have to unlearn things that they took time to learn and learn a whole new set of rules. And this happens multiple times, and that's one of the big problems, and one of the reasons that it takes so long to move up. Personally, it took me 3 years to get from bronze level to master's level, and my hope is that I can make that time span a lot shorter for you. One of the things that you don't really find out till you're a little bit better, one of the things that doesn't really play in until you're a little bit better, are settings that affect your mouse and the accuracy of your clicking, so that you can micro more effectively. The reason that I want to set this up at the very beginning, though, is that that way it's natural. You don't have to relearn the distances that your mouse is traveling, which sounds weird, but your mind actually does that subconsciously. So by the time you get to the higher levels of play, you'll be able to select individual zealots and individual zerglings, and you'll be able to move them very quickly. So first thing we're going to look at here is we're going to go to my desktop here. I don't know why StarCraft doesn't want to minimize, but I'm going to press the Windows key here, and we're going to go into, let's see, you're going to want to go into Control Panel. So let me see, there we go, Control Panel. And if yours looks like this, you're going to want to click up here where it says View By, and you're going to click Small Icons. We're going to go down to Mouse. I'm going to click that. I'm going to go over to Pointer Options. You want to set this to the 6th tick mark. There are 11 tick marks in total. You want it on the 6th one. You also want to deselect Enhance Pointer Precision. What these two settings do is the pointer speed, when it's not at 6 out of 11, it will ignore certain movements. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio. So every once in a while, to make your mouse seem like it's moving slower, when you move your mouse a certain distance, it'll skip 1 pixel. So there will actually be like a pixel that your mouse never even touched. And you don't want that when you're trying to have really precise actions on the screen. The Enhanced Pointer Precision, this is something that was introduced in one of the later versions of Windows. I'm not sure which exactly. It might have been XP. But what it does is it guesses how far that you wanted to move your mouse by how fast you're moving it. It assumes that if you wanted to click something up in the top right here, then you move your pointer really fast. And so what it does is the faster you move your pointer, the faster your mouse moves. So if I go like this, the mouse with this enabled would actually travel farther over here. Without it, your mouse will move the same distance as your hand moves. So if I move my mouse this far, it does that no matter how fast I do it. I don't know if I explained that properly, but that's essentially what it is. So we're going to click OK, and enable those settings. And then if you have a mouse that came with additional software that you can use, for example, I'm using a Logitech G500. So we're going to go over here, and it came with a Logitech gaming software. So you're going to want to open that software, and you're going to want to go to your mouse settings. And you're going to want to set your DPI to something that suits you. The higher the number, the faster your mouse is going to move. I prefer to have it at 800. I played a lot of Counter-Strike, and the lower sensitivity for those is a lot better. It's a little bit more accurate. But for StarCraft, a lot of people like it a little bit higher. But it's all depends on what you prefer. The thing you really want to set is your polling rate. You want to set that as high as you can. That affects how often your mouse checks for updates in its movement. And so this at 1000 it does it once per millisecond. And close that. Next thing, you want to go into your in-game controls or your in-game settings. You're going to press F10, bring up the menu. We're going to look at the options here. Graphics, there are a lot of settings that a lot of higher level players use to, they'll set it to medium to make things a little bit, pop out a little bit more visually. That's not as important to me because I'm not playing at that ultra high level. So I like to see the pretty effects and everything. So I set mine to ultra. Same with sound. There are certain sounds you can disable. Like ambient sounds are not actually important, so a lot of people like to disable those. So they can only focus on warnings and sounds like that. But again, that's not super important to me personally, so I don't set that. What we are going to want to do is we're going to go down to controls. We're going to want to disable enable mouse sensitivity because this does the same thing that I was talking about with setting your pointer sensitivity with Windows. And then this, by deselecting this, you set it to those settings that you already set with Windows. This is optional. Reduce mouse lag, I strongly recommend. If your computer can't handle it, then deselect it, but it's pretty important. Confine mouse cursor, I don't ever play in regular windowed mode, so this doesn't really affect me at all. I'd definitely set it on if you do play in regular windowed mode, so that enables you to move your mouse to the edge of the screen and scroll. Mouse scroll speed, keyboard scroll speed, all this stuff. This is again your personal preference. This is how fast you want your screen to dart around. I set mine to different levels, so I use them for different things. For example, drag scroll speed is when you click your mouse wheel or the middle mouse button, and then you move your mouse. And I use that to move a little bit further distances, mostly just at the beginning to set my camera hotkeys. Your keyboard scroll speed is using the arrow keys. I don't really use that much except for like when I'm lazy and watching replays. But the mouse scroll speed is when you put your mouse to the edge of the screen. You do not want smart camera pan, and these two might be helpful for you depending if you ever run into these issues. I have a keyboard that disables the Windows key already, so that's not a big issue for me. I would definitely put it on if I didn't have that because you don't want to accidentally minimize your game, especially if you're playing full screen. That'll really lag out. Let's see, the gameplay settings. You want to have this disabled. Some people like it, but the big issue that I run into is that these alerts pop up on the left hand side of the screen here. And so when you're clicking around trying to click on things, if you accidentally click on the left side of the screen, you can sometimes click these alerts and it will refocus where your camera is. It's really a pain, and it will sometimes lose you battles, and for a second you'll wonder why your camera is jumping over there until you figure it out. So I like to keep that disabled. It just avoids misclicks. You want to avoid that. That's where you'll see a lot of these settings in the gameplay options are about avoiding misclicks. The game timer you definitely want to see, so you can compare your timings. You know kind of what once you get a little bit better, you know what things to expect based on what time in the game it is. Definitely turn the build grid on, because what you're going to want to do a lot of the times is you're going to want to set up a sim city. That's the term for when you're setting up your base to prepare for certain things so that your building locations are placed intelligently and not just randomly around. For example, when you're building a wall against Zerg, you want to be able to see with this build grid where Zerglings can fit through, and without the build grid it's kind of hard. That puts a little bit of guesswork in there. The world object tooltips, game tooltips, all that stuff is really personal preference. These are just like things so that when you mouse over things in the world, it'll tell you what they are. Same with game tooltips. So when you mouse over an ability, it'll tell you what the ability does. I leave it on there. It doesn't really affect me because I don't click on things on the command card a lot, and I've just never had an issue with it, so I leave it on. You definitely want to select this because what we're going to focus on today is using strictly hotkeys. You never want to click in this bottom area of the screen where all your commands are. There's no reason to. They all have hotkeys that work a lot better. So we're going to definitely turn this on, so that way we can just look down at the bottom of the right screen, the bottom right hand side of the screen, and we're going to see what button on the keyboard we have to press. Enable starting worker rally. Again, I say definitely do this. Some people argue that at the very, like at the pro level, that it's better to move them, but that's not even certain. So definitely, if you're not like rank 1 grandmaster, I'd turn this on. Show unit life bars. I say always. They have this new damaged option, which will only turn them on if they're damaged. Some people like that, but it's I like to always be able to see the life of my units and the enemy units. So either one of these two, I'd say, is acceptable. I'm gonna go. I'd recommend always. It just makes it easier. You know which units you have to pull back, which units are about to die, and whether you should be committing to an attack or not. Turn on show flyer helper. I didn't do this for a long time, but it's actually extremely helpful to be able to do like your AoEs, like your psi storms, fungal growths, things like that, and be able to hit a, like, say a flock of mutalisks or a murder of mutalisks or whatever you want to call them. This stuff is regarding replays, not really important to what we're doing here. Definitely disable team colored life bar. It makes it so it's harder to see which units are damaged and dying at a single glance. Always show worker status so that you know how many workers are mining. Disable enable sample command card, because we're going to want to see these keys down here again, and the simple command card is just a little bit more distracting in my opinion. Let's see, the current order indicator, you can leave this on if you'd like. I felt like my screen was a little bit too cluttered with it. It just shows where you're, if you select a unit and you say you right click down here from the move, it'll show a little green arrow there to let you know that that's what you told them to do. Select all larvae, personal preference if you play Zerg. That's just if you click a single larva, it will select all the larvae. Experience points. A lot of people say disable this because it's not really important. Again, it doesn't really get in my way personally, so I leave it on. I'm all about the frill. You know, I play the game for fun, and so I don't mind all the little extra special effects. Definitely enable this. This is one of the big things when Heart of the Swarm first came out. They disabled this by default for some reason, and you couldn't click on the units to see what when an enemy is building, like warping in a gateway. You want to be able to click on that gateway and make sure it's a gateway and not a Stargate. Things like that. So definitely enable that. Now this is very important. Set your control groups to unclickable. If they're set as normal, then what you're going to do is sometimes you'll end up clicking the same with those alerts on the side that I was talking about. You can end up clicking the hotkeys that you have set, and they'll reset them, they'll center the screen on them, they'll add to them, they'll remove them, just things that you really don't want, because we're going to be using the keyboard for that. So you're going to set it to unclickable, that way you can still see them, but you can't mess them up. And then observer interface, that's for, again, watching replays and observing other people playing, and it's more for casting. So those are the big things you want to focus on. The next big thing are your hotkeys. I recommend going through whatever race you play. I play Protoss, so you're going to want to go through and check each of these abilities and set them to what you think would be most comfortable for you. The idea is that you want to keep your hands on the home keys, ASDF, and not move them far from that. So in StarCraft 1, building a probe was the letter P. So that was a reach the entire way across the keyboard. They changed that with StarCraft 2, and probe became E because it's a lot closer to that left-hand side of your keyboard. So there's your standard, and the other one that people like to use is grid. And again, this is preference. This is if you want to set the like the same keys, so that way you can just set it to how they have it here. It's your the first five keys on the top row, second row, and third row. I'd recommend mixing these up a little bit, because one of the things you run into is, for example, build Nexus would be ZQ, and that uses the same finger, so you'd be pressing Z with your pinky, Q with your pinky, and that travel time actually takes more time than you'd think it would once you get into like these split second decisions that you have to be making, and you don't want to spend a lot of time at home placing nexuses. So definitely switch these up. So maybe like I'm not sure, I haven't really messed with the grid layout, but I'd set it up so that keys that you commonly press one after the other, you're going to want to put on separate buttons. That's why I personally went through each and every one of my units. I clicked this and I went, what do I want to use for move? Move, not really important because you're going to be right clicking for that all the time. You'll never actually touch it. But for things like build, I said, in my opinion, build is the most common function I'm going to be using with my worker, so I set that to S because that's the easiest key for me to press. And I don't want to be pressing, so now I don't want to be, when it goes into this menu, I'm going to press S, it goes into this menu. I don't want to use any of the buttons really with my ring finger, because that's what I'd use to press S. So for example, SD, that's a common one. So SD, those are two separate fingers, the keys are right next to each other, that's a good one. SF, again, two separate fingers. SR, two separate fingers. SC, two separate fingers. SW, same finger, but I mean, how many simulators do you build? 2 per base? That's not a lot of times I'm going to be pressing that combination. Same with SS, I'm going to be building a maximum, on an extremely rare occasion I might build 3 forges, but most games it's going to be 2 or 1. So I'm not going to be pressing SS hardly at all. Nexus, SA, 2 separate fingers again. So that was my idea setting up my personal hotkey profile. A lot of people don't like this because it makes different units have the same buttons. So for example, if I have a Nexus here and I try to click a probe and build in a simulator real quick, I press probe SW, but I don't actually click the probe accidentally, it clicks my Nexus. Well, S has also built a probe for me. So then that's a misclick there. That's a little bit of a flaw in the build and the setup that I have, but I don't really run into that issue all that often, so I haven't taken the time to debug it, I guess would be the word. Okay, so once you set up all these for yourself, you're going to want to go into your global hotkeys, and there are a lot of different hotkeys in this. First one we're going to look at is camera hotkeys. The big ones are the base cameras. If you're a Zerg, you're going to want to set this to space. It's by default backspace. You're going to want to set to space. That will make it so when you press space, it'll cycle through your bases. You can inject larvae really quickly using what they call the backspace method. The other important ones are your create location. You're going to want to set these to your F keys up at the top. At least that's the setup that I like. Again, if camera hotkeys are a little bit more important to you, you might set those through 1 through 5, set unit hotkeys. I don't know, however you want to set it up, but the way I have mine, let's see, my jump to locations, these are to jump to those camera locations. I'm going to press F1 through F5. So to set those locations, I'm going to press Shift F1 through F5. So to set my main base hotkey, I use Shift F4, and so that creates location 4. When I want to jump to my main base, I press F4, so that jumps to location 4. It's pretty straightforward setup there. Let's see, and then I have a 6 camera hotkey set to tilde. I don't really use that all that often, but I could. The option is there. The next thing we're going to look at is control groups. These are the most important hotkeys you can set. To set your control groups, you're going to want to press, for most people, this is the way that, say, probably 99% of the people play. It's going to be Control 1 to set the first hotkey, and then you're going to do Control whatever. To select those hotkeys, you're going to press 1 through whatever. The way I have mine set up, I figured that 6 was kind of a reach for me, so to keep everything more compact in the way that I like to play, I set my 6th control group to T, 7th to G, and 8th to V. And you can see if you look at your keyboard, that creates a nice little arc of 1 through 5 TGV. It makes like a nice little border around the keys that I'm going to be using to control my units. And then Control X, I set to my 10th hotkey. It's a little trick that I learned from Husky a long time ago, so even when I didn't have these TGV things, X is a rarely used key by default, and so it's nice to set that to a harassment unit or something. It's an easy key to press. I don't know, again, you can set it up however you want. And then to select those, you're going to want to set the same ones, the same hotkeys minus the control. So control group 1 is 1, not control 1. To add units, you're going to want to do Shift and then the hotkey. This is for, like, let's say you have, I mean, you'll use this an unbelievable amount of times throughout the game. But let's say you have a whole bunch of units down fighting the enemy, you make a whole bunch more units at home. You want to select all those units, and you don't want to replace them, so you're not going to use Control because that replaces your control group. You're going to press Shift and add them. You don't want to, instead of defining it, you're just going to add to it. And let's see, those are really the big important hotkeys. You can see I even have some that are unbound because I don't use these. I like to keep my warp gates set to T, so I don't use warp in. I also don't use jump to last alert. It's just something that I've never done. I've never really paid attention to the alerts too much. A lot of those are like, your building's finished. I don't really need to jump to that building immediately when I'm in the middle of something else. But that's, again, personal preference. I think hotkeys are a deeply personal setup. There's no right answer for everybody. It's all just what type of control you like to have and what type of commands you use a lot. So all that will take is just set up something that you think feels right and makes sense to you, and then try it out in the game. And if something feels unnatural while you're playing, or something feels ineffective, then you just go in and tweak it a little bit, and then eventually what you'll end up with is something that really works for you. Now I'm going to go jump into a game here where we're going to focus on the basics of playing any StarCraft game, and that's constantly producing workers and using your hotkeys that we just set up. The hotkeys that I like to use are 1 for my main army, 2 will be my casters, 3 would be harassment, 4 is a mothership core, 5 would be your nexus and your upgrades, T is warp gates and robo, G stargate, X harassment. Now that sounds like a lot, but you'll see it becomes very natural as you add in. I like to use my thought process for setting these up when I started 3 years ago was that I want to use 1 through 4 to control different aspects of my army. Especially when I was starting, my mouse pointer accuracy was terribly bad, my micro was terribly bad. So what I'd have to do is I'd set all my stalkers and zealots to 1, my colossi to 2, because that was a unit that I didn't want to lose, and I wanted to be able to micro it, but I didn't have the accuracy to click on them. So I'd just press 2 and move them back. 3 would be High Templar, 4 would be void rays. Instead of being able to click anything on the screen, I just set them all to separate hotkeys. So that's why I use 4 hotkeys for different army groups. 5 is Nexus. It's not a far, it's just I move my pointer finger straight up from F. It's not hard to press, and then I use those. And then originally I had 6 and 7 being production buildings, but I changed those to T and G after I played a little bit more. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and play a game just focusing on those 2 principles that we were talking about. I'm going to be focusing on building workers the entire time, and I'm going to be focusing on using my hotkeys. So my probe is S. For me personally, again, you might have set yours up however you want. But whenever I'm giving these hotkeys, I'm going to be going over what my hotkey profile is, just for the sake of, so you understand that I'm seeing S written here, I'm pressing S. Normally I build a pylon on 9, but since I'm just focusing on getting these workers, I'm going to wait until I actually have the extra money to build that pylon there, and shift click back to gather minerals when that pylon's built. We're going to keep warping in some probes here. We're going to be side blocked, so as soon as this pylon finishes, we'll be able to start producing probes again. Let's see, my opponent will be Terran. So all we're going to do, we're going to stick to, okay, I want a chrono boost. So I look down there, W, click on the building, and it chrono boosts it. We're going to keep 2 to 3 probes queued up at all times. That's going to be our goal. And so now we have some extra minerals, so let's build a gateway. You can go down here, S for build, D for gateway, there we go, and click back up here to mine. And click on this, press Shift T for me, that's to add it to the control group 6. We're going to set the rally point down there. Get more probes queued up here, and chrono boost them out. Let's go ahead and put a Vespene geyser down, and shift click on that mineral field. What we're going to do is we're going to stick only to gateway and robotics facility units. These are your tier 1 and tier 2 units. That's all you're going to be focused on. And so we go ahead and we keep these probes building. We're going to chrono boost this one more time. I'm going to drag click 3 workers, go ahead and put them in here. If I would have accidentally drag clicked 4 or 5, you can just go down here, hold shift, click, click, get rid of those. Now you have 3, send them in there. Gonna put more probes in there, chrono boost it out. Let's build a cybernetics core. Then we're gonna press T, build a zealot. And we still have some extra minerals, so we're gonna build those pylons that we need. Go 1, 1, there we go. And send back to mine. Or side blocked, which is unfortunate, but it does happen. And it's not really a big deal. Just play through it. You might feel like, oh, you've lost the game, you're not going to have to sell it out nearly as soon. But even if you do lose, it's not that big of a deal. We're just playing to get better, not playing to win at this point. We're going to chrono boost this again, get caught back up. We're going to come down here, and let's see, we have some money, so we're going to put down 2 more gateways, just to be safe in case any pressure comes. We'll have that extra protection. We're going to control click this while they're still warping in. See, it selects all the gateways that are in the screen area, so we're going to press Shift T, add that to my 6 control group, queue some more probes back up. Now we're going to click on this. I want to get warp gate technology, so I'm going to press F. I press that on the keyboard. Do not click it. That's how you get in bad habits, even if you're like, oh, next time I'll click it now that I know the hotkey. Just press it this time, even if it's a little bit slower. It's not a big deal. Okay, the Zealot's going to chase him down. We're just going to let him do it automatically. Now we have 400 minerals, so we're just going to come down here and we're going to build. Nexus is A, so let's go ahead and expand there. Then I'm going to press Shift, because after that I want to do a pylon, so Shift, S for build, F for pylon, and there we go. He's blocked it, so we're just going to send this Zealot down here. Not a big deal. We're just going to chrono boost this warp gate. And we're going to get, let's get 3 stalkers, so press D 3 times, because that's my stalker hotkey. And we'll keep building probes. We're going to build an assimilator over here. There we go. He's already canceled it, and so now we're just going to wait for that 400 minerals to come back up. And we'll expand again. So S, A, and there we go. Add that over there. We're going to rally it. There we go. And we'll put the rally point for those. I right click with those gateways selected, and that puts their rally point here. You see the arrow points to exactly where they're going to go. And so now I'm going to control, click on these stalkers, Shift F1. Now when I press the number 1, it selects all my army. I press 5, check on that. Need more probes. Not a big deal. We have this very saturated, so we're going to go ahead and rally this down to the natural. Let's start getting our natural mining too. Going to go ahead, I only selected 2, so I press Shift, click another probe, and we'll send those 3 into that geyser. And warp gate's almost finished, so as soon as that finishes, we'll go ahead and warp these in. Now that we're also mining gas, I'm going to go ahead and get a robotics facility, so it'll enable me to get detection and immortals, which are very hard hitters. So there we go. D for advanced buildings, F for robotics facility, and we'll plant that down. Let me go ahead and add this to also my 6 key. So there we go. Shift T, rally it down here. I'm going to press T again. By default, it selects your gateways first. You're going to hold R. And there we go. And then we're going to place a lot more gateways too, because we're getting 2 base economy going on here. So we want more production buildings to keep up with all our income. You go 1, SD, hold Shift. And then we're going to click and click. Holding that Shift key after you select the building will let you place it kind of like the stamp tool on Photoshop if you ever use that. So we can control click these, morphing in, we're going to press Shift T, add it to the group, and there we go. You see when you have 3 subgroups, so you tab to select between subgroups. So right now we have the warp gate, so I'm going to warp in around the zealots. So I press S, hold Shift, click, 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 place all the zealots. Control click that, add it to the hotkey. I'm going to press T, select my buildings. These are on cooldown. I'm going to tab, that's going to select these gateways that are building. I'm going to select this. I want 2 observers, which is a W. There we go, press W twice. We're good to go. Keep these workers building. I want 2 to 3 in each one. And go ahead and get these gas down here too, because we're going to be building immortals soon. So now that these warp gates are finished, I'm going to press T. You see these are all right here, so I'm going to, it's highlighting these. Press Tab. It's highlighting these. Hold R. There we go. They're warping in. I'm going to highlight this one. I want to queue up an immortal there. Then we'll go back up here. Press 5. Chrono boost. W. There we go. We're going to spam a bunch of pylons because we're side blocked. We're going to press S, F for the pylons. Hold Shift. Click, 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 click. And while these are building too, I'm going to go ahead and build another robotics facility. I want to get a lot of immortals. That's just what I'm choosing to do. This is not any kind of build that you need to copy. This is just random buildings to get used to building these workers. You press a D for advanced building, F for that. We're going to send them back. 5, queue up some workers. Let's chrono boost these workers out. W click, W click. We're going to drag select, go ahead and send these in here. Select 4, shift click that, there we go. And keep these queued up. We got some warping around the zealots here, so I'm just going to hold shift, click 6 times, there we go. Let's add this to my hotkey too, so shift T, there we go. I'm going to rally it down here. Let's get another immortal on the way. There we go. The other thing I want to get is some cannons up to protect against drops. So we're going to do SF pylon here. That's going to be where we're going to put cannons. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to build a forge. So for me that's SS. There we go. Put that down. Queue up some more probes. Again, any between actions, every time you do something, as soon as you're done doing that, press 5, check how your worker production is going. We're going to click this probe here, and we're going to put a pylon down here. So as soon as that forge finishes, we're going to put a cannon in the mineral line. Protect against those drops. Press T, let's get around to stalkers in here. Don't have a lot of range. And again, D, shift, click, 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 click. Getting close to our mineral cap, let's just do another wave of pylons. So SF, and hold shift, click, click, click. There we go. T, tab, DD. That's going to start building 2 immortals. I don't actually have the minerals, so I'm going to wait until my minerals build up a little bit. And there we go. Now I've got 2 immortals queued up. And we're going to build some more probes. There we go, keeping the 2 queued up. And let's go ahead and build some cannons up here. And click. Notice I haven't scouted the enemy at all. I'm not worried about the enemy. This isn't about winning or losing. This is just about getting an army up. Okay, we have these 2 immortals queued here. As soon as these finish, I'm going to push because I feel like I have kind of a large army here. I'm just going to send this extra observer I have down here to see what's going on with his base. And let's go ahead and take another base since we're getting both of ours saturated. So we're going to come down here, SA, click, hold shift, SF, click, click, click. Again, shift just queues up any commands. Any commands in the game you can queue up to have them do after the current action's completed. So we're going to keep these workers building. And we're going to rally them all down to our 3rd here because that's the base that needs saturated. Control click the immortals, make sure they're in a group. Going to go ahead and do a wave of zealots as our meat shields here. Click, 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 click. Control click, shift 1, there we go. I'm also going to send a probe out with it. There happens to be a probe walking by, so I select him. I'm just going to go ahead and put this pylon down here so that we can warp in with it. See, he has a very defensive position set up here. And he actually has a missile turret there. Almost lose that. Now see, he has a pretty big army here. So we're just going to make sure that he doesn't have a 3rd. So we're going to 1A over here to this 3rd. And we're going to keep the probe production up. Let's take we don't really need the gas, I guess, because we're getting the immortals. So we're going to tab, DD, 2 immortals. And then let's just warp in some stalkers at home. They're the fastest unit, so if you don't have a proxy pylon up, these are good. Shift 1, 1A, we're going to go back here. And we're going to send this probe down here to check for the 3rd. There are cannon set, or a siege tank set up, so I'm kind of nervous about walking past here. So the probe makes it through just fine, though. He does know I have a 3rd. Not a big deal, we're just going to keep making workers. Build 2 geysers there. Actually, no, don't do that. I'm going to cancel those. Let's build a couple of cannons down here. Protect against drops. He doesn't have a 3rd, so we're feeling okay. We're just going to have the better economy. If you want, you can start getting upgrades. Not something that you really need to focus on at this point. Let's put some more cannons down here just to be safe. He's trying to move out, so that's good. We're just going to move down here. And we'll just keep adding units in. Add these in, shift 1, send them with our big group. Put a pylon down here since our probe's still alive and he killed our proxy pylon. And let's build another one up here. SF, just lets me select that very quickly. This is saturated too, so we're just going to lay off a probe production for a while. Let's go ahead and see what we can do. Tab, keep making immortals, and we need some more gateways. So we're going to ignore our army that's fighting in the middle. It's not that important. SD, shift, click, 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 click. Let's get some more gateways down. We want this production more than we want to be microing this engagement. So we're going to move back in. And let's just do another round of zealots here. Shift 1, there we go. And we're going to back up. We don't want to fight when he has siege tanks set up, so we're just going to move back. Let's send another probe down here. To replace this probe that we're setting this proxy pylon up, I'm going to build 2 more workers. Doesn't matter which nexus makes them because they're all just going to come down here eventually anyway. And now we're going to come up here, click these new gateways, shift T, add them to the group. We want to be able to use them. T, tab, tab. That's going to select this subgroup. DD, build 2 more immortals. And we're just going to go build 2 more pylons so that we can max out. And then we're just going to build some more gateways. I'm just holding shift so I can stamp these down. Control click this, shift T, and hold R so that way they all turn into warp gates. And we're going to select these new ones too, Shift T. There we go. I'm going to back up a little bit. See where these rally points are set. So what we're going to do, now that we see these mineral fields are running out, we're going to have to take a fourth base. We want to keep 3 bases saturated, so we're going to come over here, SA, build that, hold Shift, and build your pylons around it too. And go back to mining. We're going to control click these, add them to our group, and there we go, send them out. And then we're going to build 2 more. We're just going to try to keep everything working smoothly, even while we're not paying attention to it. So as soon as these warp in, holding R, we're going to make them into warp gates. So we can start warping in with them. And then we're going to research some ground armor too. Move back my army, I don't want to lose that there. And we're going to send all of these workers down here to our 4th to start mining down here. See, I saw there was a gateway, so I just tabbed, pressed R, turned it into warp gate. I'm going to build 2 more immortals here, keep these working. And there we go, they popped out. There we go. Add these to it, Shift T, hold R. There we go. We're just going to have a lot of production versuses. We're going to warp in some more zealots. I just like zealots because they're a good meat shield. Going to add those to the group, and let's go in and see what we can do. And the stalkers in the front, not very great, but we're not worrying about microing right now. Just going to move in here, see what we can do. I'm going to start warping in our new army back home. I'm going to do a lot of stalkers here. I don't know why it's doing that. Weird. Okay. Control click, Shift 1, there we go. We're going to set this rally point back here, where it should be. You can see our army that we haven't been looking at is actually winning. We don't have to babysit it. But we do have this contingency plan here. So we're going to add it to the high group and we're going to move it out now that we see that everything's going alright. Let's do another wave of zealots here. Shift 1, add it to the group. As soon as they warp in, 1A, click. We're just going to keep doing that until we win. There we go, this is getting low, so let's go ahead and take a 5th base. Let's go up here, SA, build that, SF, and click, 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 gather minerals. So let's some cannons here, just in case he decides to drop. He won't, but this is just for practice. Place all these cannons here again the same way. SC, hold Shift, click, click, click. 1A, and let's warp in another wave of units too. Control click these, Shift 1, there we go. Shift 1, there we go. And there we go, there's the GG. And there we see, we won. No strategy, really, I mean, no scouting. We just let him play how he wanted to play, and we just focused on keeping our economy on track and just getting units out. Not necessarily the right units, but just because those are the 2 things that I want you to focus on for a while, is those keeping constant worker production and using your hotkeys. And after you're comfortable with those 2 things, you can start adding in other things like scouting, putting pressure on unit compositions, expanding 2 base timings, those kind of things. You can focus on those after you're comfortable with these 2 core concepts. And even after you start learning these other things, if you find these 2 core concepts are slipping for you, then you're going to have to go back and work on them again, because without these, you can't get very far on the ladder at all. So that is it for this week, and thank you for joining me. I'll see you guys next time.